Hi, Sultan. Is the Transhumanist Wager. So it's a very philosophical science fiction novel, which brought him to a lot of adventures. So Sultan, welcome to Quantum Photonics. We're very glad to have you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. As this is my first time, just jump in and let me know if either you can't hear me or something is going wrong. But thank you so much for that introduction. And I think if it's okay, Cecile, I'll probably just start with like a 5-minute talk, and then we can maybe go to questions, or maybe 10-minute talk. Is that good?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Great. Well, I think, after Cecile's introduction, I think the main thing to be said about what's happened is when I ran for the U.S. presidency in 2016, we were able to create a large amount of media traffic around transhumanism. It began when I formed the Transhumanist Party, and then was nominated to be its presidential candidate, and then ran, basically a 2-year plus campaign. And America's a bit crazy. There are always people running. In fact, there were over 1,000 people, I believe, running in 2016. But by the end of it, I was trafficking about 5th or 6th in the U.S. presidential race. And so there was a huge amount of major media that was covering what I was doing. And it was great because I had a platform to finally speak about transhumanism. So, in 2016 or 2014, 15, 16, when I started running for the office, transhumanism was still kind of a little bit of a fringe idea. And now, through a lot of media stuff, it kind of grew quite big. But my career in transhumanism, the reason I kind of became a transhumanist was at National Geographic. I was covering a lot of war zones. In fact, war zones very similar to what's going on in Ukraine right now. And it was a very heavy situation to be doing that. And I had actually a bunch of very close calls. One close call that was not actually in a war zone, but it's just as dangerous, was in Vietnam when I almost stepped on the landmine. And it really changed my perspective about the field of death because I almost died. And I thought to myself, wow, there must be something I can do to overcome death. Now, maybe not all transhumanists agree with this, but I certainly still think it's the truth. The number one goal of transhumanism is to overcome death with biological science and technology. And so, the entire movement, in my opinion, is really revolving around that great goal. And since I've been running for office, because I've ran for office after U.S. presidency, again for the presidency and also for the governorship of California, the amount of money going into transhumanism in the last 10 years, it's not doubled, it's not tripled, it's not quadrupled. It's like up 20 or 30 times. There was just a few $1 billion going towards life extension, overcoming death, in 2013 when I first published my novel, The Transhumanist Wager. Today, there's about $100 billion, and Bank of America thinks it's going to about $250, maybe even $500 billion by the year 2025. And you have billionaires like Jeff Bezos joining. You have billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, saying, in quotes, trying to conquer all disease. So transhumanism, even if you don't use the word, has dramatically grown in scope, in power, and financial strength in the last 3 or 4 years. And that's really why you're starting to see some of these radical new ideas come. I mean, the fact that the world was able to, create a vaccine for COVID and to be effective is a statement about what transhumanism is going. I mean, the RNA technology is something quite different than we had before. And these are exactly all the new types of things that transhumanists are trying to do. Now vaccines for cancer, vaccines for Alzheimer's, vaccines for everything. The idea that we can eliminate all disease. And, I've been really grateful and honored to have been playing a significant role in the media and in the visibility of transhumanism. Unfortunately, I wish there were more journalists in the movement, but I began my career as a journalist, and so I continued it in transhumanism writing. Some of the biggest things I've done is done some of the New York Times opinion pieces. So if you want to read about cyborg Olympics or chip implants, things like that, you can read about my work and read about what I've written in the New York Times opinion section. But the fact that we're kind of getting transhumanism is starting to infiltrate all realms of media, as well as get to a point when there's just so much money involved. Silicon Valley is exploding with transhumanism ideas, whether it's the metaverse, whether it's exoskeleton suits so that there's nobody disabled ever again on planet Earth, or whether it's even things like brain implants so that nobody has Alzheimer's, this disease that's starting to really tackle a lot of the older population as people live dramatically longer. But transhumanists are there at the forefront, leading this charge to overcome, what is plaguing human beings. And first and foremost, what's plaguing us is death, but then it's all these terrible diseases. But, death takes away your loved ones, your parents, your children, and, we want to make that so that never happens again. But the key to transhumanism is to follow a path that's very similar to environmentalism. Now, transhumanism and environmentalism are two totally different movements, but the way environmentalism grew over the last 25 years, when it began in the 70s with Greenpeace, and look where it is now 50 years later, it's a worldwide phenomenon where almost everybody's an environmentalist. That's what we're trying to do with transhumanism. How do we take transhumanism, which is maybe a 10 or 100 million person movement? There's maybe a couple 100 million people that love technology, but how do we take it into the billions? And that's really the great goal of transhumanism, is to get it so that it's a lifestyle, it's a culture, it's something that we all want to embrace because we see it as a way to keep our loved ones alive longer. We see it as a way to keep ourselves alive longer. And not only that, transhumanism is really broad. When you start talking about the things that can happen off-planet, getting to Mars, uploading our consciousness, being a part of the metaverse, maybe having multiple identities, the field is wide open on what we can do and what we can be. But most importantly, I think, is really the idea that we're going to eliminate disease and hopefully eliminate aging, so that at least people have a choice not to die just through, the tragedy of the universe and just killing us because that's just how the universe works, like through COVID or something like that. We want to have power over our bodies and power over physical nature so that we can choose how we decide to live and if we decide to die as well. It's possible transhumanists may want to die in the future, but the most important thing is power over the biological world so that we can have more control over what is happening to us. But the idea is that if we can follow a trajectory like the environmental movement, it's quite possible in 10 or 15 or even 20 years, we could become a multi-billion person movement. And that means a huge amount more money. That means politicians talking about it, maybe passing laws in favor of it. One of the things I did in my U.S. presidential run in 2016 was write the Transhumanist Bill of Rights, which we then posted to the U.S. Capitol building. And even though it fell off and there's some funny stories behind that, the point, though, is that the Transhumanist Bill of Rights has grown through various versions and stuff like that, and now is actually being considered by various different people and high up. I spoke about it at one of the events at the World Economic Forum, and I still write about it quite frequently. So we have a Transhumanist Bill of Rights, which talks about cyborgs, talks about what to do with artificial intelligence, tries to declare aging a disease. That's one of the big goals of transhumanism, that we can governments declare aging a disease and say that it's time to overcome that. But these are some of the ideas behind the movement of transhumanism, and I've been very honored and grateful to have played a part in pushing it forth in the media, as well as trying to address some of the political issues. But transhumanism is across the spectrum. Of course, the most important people are probably the scientists, but there are also just so many other people. Maybe it's attorneys, it's writers, it's poets, it's academics, whoever it is. It's if you're pushing the field of science and technology to modify the human being to become better, then you are a transhumanist. But thank you for listening to Small Talk. And so if we have some questions, I'd love to answer any of them. And I can also talk more if people want, but I just thought I'd give it kind of short in case people had questions.
Hi, Zoltan. It's great to meet you. Actually, was aware of you during your presidential runs, and I had to listen to some of the things that you said. It did make me to be more intrigued as to what transhumanism is all about, and I'm really glad that you are here in person to explain that. I do have a few questions. So I guess the first one being that there are so many promises in science and technology that, so far we have come like over probably like, 200. I mean, we've seen like some technological explosion within the last 100 and 200 years. But there are some promises which are kind of like made by science which have not been delivered yet. So how do you kind of fit those into like the whole narrative that that you want to usher humanity to like the next age of evolution, which is sort of like a technologically with the addition of technological input that would kind of guarantee humanity's existence? That's my first question. And the second one being that how do you kind of democratize such kind of technologies? Because with the COVID virus, I think like most nations in the most Western nations actually have been kind of lucky enough to kind of afford vaccination for the masses, but we've seen that that's not true for the rest of the world. Of course, you running for the candidacy for the presidency of the United States does not sort of include the world, but I just wanted to kind of mention that as an example to show that whenever such kind of technologies kind of pop in that would seem to have enormous amount of advantage for humanity, they seem to be being used like for the few that can afford them. So how could you guarantee like equal distribution of such technologies? And I'll start with that. Thank you.
Sure. Well, thank you for some great questions. Let me just say first to your first question that, we don't have flying cars yet and things like that they all promised us. So futurists make mistakes all the time. Transhumanists make mistakes. It's not a J curve that grows straight up. It's kind of like back and forth. And that's the way the technological world is. But then we have breakthroughs like the internet or genetic editing, or maybe it'll be artificial intelligence next week. And as you've probably been listening in the news, fusion, maybe fusion this year is finally about to catch up and actually become something that we can use in a day-to-day basis. Maybe not this year, but the breakthroughs this year in the science journals seem to really point to fusion coming. So unfortunately, we listen to the media, we listen to futurists. No one really has the world wired, but there's no question that we are on a kind of an upward swing. And it basically comes down to Moore's law, which is the microprocessor doubles every 18 or 24 months. Now, that's not a perfect law, and it seems to be slowing down a bit. But even if it slows down quite a bit, it's still, doubling every 3 or 4 years. And that's quite a lot when you look at, historically speaking, transistor sizes, transistor speeds, artificial intelligence, and things like that. I really have no doubt that in 10 or 20 years, we're going to start embracing our cyborg self, plugging into AI, having decisions made for us in our head instead of our phone and things like that. It's really just a question of mass adoption. And that also brings us to your next question, which is, how do we create a world that's actually equal for everybody? Now, one of the things people know from my presidential campaign, as well as all my other campaigns, is that I have supported a universal basic income. There are different variations. Mine is sort of a libertarian one. But the point of the story is that it's not just automation, I believe, that is threatening why we might need a universal basic income. It's because I think it establishes a floor of equality so that we don't have homeless. We don't have people starving. I mean, even in America, 15% of children are going to bed hungry at night on occasion, or regularly they are. And this is kind of unacceptable to me. So I've always thought that it's one thing to let the rich become super rich, which is fine for me, but we need to create a society where there's no real bottom. The bottom is something where people can still live decent lives. And one of the main reasons I think, universal basic income would help create equality for everyone is because it would give a lot of people more free time to be creative, whether it's art, whether it's joining transhumanism groups, whether it's doing something that, can contribute towards a better world. I think, creating some type of universal basic income will really lay the floor to the foundation of society. Something that takes us kind of to that Star Trek era where we don't have such a bottom 10 or 15% population. I live in San Francisco. The homeless problem has become unacceptable. It's become so bad. It's like it's time that people stand up and do something so that our everybody has sort of those very basics covered. And you have to understand, I come from a very libertarian perspective, so it's a far bridge for me to say this, but I say it because it really needs to be done. Now, I feel like once we have this kind of universal basic income, then equality will fall in place. People will have access to technology. People will be able to use their universal basic income to pay for healthcare if they don't have a socialized system of healthcare. But whatever it is, they'll be able to have enough money to say, you know what, I want that robotic eye. It's not just Mark Zuckerberg who gets it. Or I want, some kind of new exoskeleton suit to play a better game of tennis, and I'm going to get it. So I feel like at the very core of society, what we need is a real I suppose, dedication to making sure that everybody is on the same playing field and that we have no real bottom feeders who are just like, on the streets at night and stuff like that. That I feel is kind of unacceptable. I think everything else falls in place once we create that universal basic income. I think you then start seeing a lot more equality in education, a lot more equality in medicine, a lot more equality in people's lifestyles and things like that. It comes from taking the bottom and making sure that everybody is considered. And then people have the freedom to decide how far they want to go. Do they want to become trillionaires, or do they just want to be happy with their basic income and play guitar? That's fine with me, whatever they want to do, but at least they're not starving and homeless.
Thanks, Zoltan. We are so honored to have you today. Glad to learn from the transhumanism today. So, but based on your opinion, does that mean eventually we will merge with technology as itself? So, what's after the final stage of the human process? Do you think the ego eventually will need to be redefined so that the technology will replace the human on the self-unconsciousness? Thank you.
Well, so one of the things I didn't mention in my early speech is I'm now studying at the University of Oxford. I'm doing a graduate degree, a master's degree in philosophy and ethics. In fact, I'm just leaving here shortly to go do my my week of AI ethics, which is going to be great. I'm going to be listening to Nick Bostrom and mixing with all these other people. So really thinking about it. One of the great questions is, what are we going to become? And I'm a pretty firm believer. You have Elon Musk working on brain implants and Brian Johnson, his company Kernel. There's no question that we're moving forward in this direction, that eventually we'll be able to, if not necessarily upload our brains, but have our brainwaves be a part of artificial intelligence. And that really changes how we're going to look at the world. Will we only have 5 senses when we have the capacity of AI? Or will we still feel love? Well, yeah, probably, but maybe there's even things that are further than love when you have a computational power that's stronger than the human mind. Okay, now I'm talking 20, 30, 40, 50 years out. Will we have an ego, especially if we have like a hive mind, almost like this, clubhouse where we're all interconnected, thinking the same thoughts, listening? How does our ego change because of that? All these things are, I think, going to dramatically change as we start moving our brain over into the silicon world, where we actually have ones and zeros and data and far more capabilities. But in the meantime, it's kind of, there's not that much change happening except in the world around us. For example, like this clubhouse, what we're doing right now. It just, 5-10 years ago, these kinds of things weren't really there yet. And in 20 years or 10 years, what is going to be the next thing that is so dramatic? Maybe the metaverse. Maybe we're all there connected in different bodysuits. In fact, when I was running in the U.S. presidential campaign, I gave a talk in Second Life. So I had a virtual avatar, and there was a couple hundred other virtual avatars. And, while they might not vote in Second Life, maybe in the future we will vote. In fact, for New Scientist, I wrote an article on the dilemma of machines, your devices becoming so smart, maybe in 10 or 20 or 30 years, that they want to vote too, that they have a consciousness of their own. And there's about 100 billion, about 80 billion devices out there. Can you imagine if 80 billion devices decided in 50 years that they want to vote? How would that upend politics? How would that upend so many other things? And while these are kind of fringe questions and they're not really here today, they're certainly going to be here in the future. So we really have to start kind of trying to understand that, decide if we like that, decide how far we want to go. And frankly, if machines are going to be wanting to vote, we better merge more with machines so we understand them better, and we also have their smart capabilities, because I think we'll be left behind if we just stick with the biology. Biology is designed to die. It's designed to get old. It's you know, you can break your bones. You can choke to death. Eating the wrong hot dog. You get cold. You freeze to death. There's a reason that I think we will start to move towards some type of machine world. And maybe after the machine world, you know, you get on beyond AI, it gets into quantum mechanics, things like that. It might be some kind of whole new idea of the self that we haven't even really understood yet. But whatever it is, it's going to be advancement. It's going to be evolution. So I think we go that direction. We just have to be very careful that we don't lose the best parts of ourselves. And that's humanity. That's our mammalian. You know, the propensity to love, the propensity to care about one another, the propensity to want to improve ourselves, but not at the expense of harming another person. I think we can have both worlds, where we can maybe be machine entities, very super sophisticated entities, but still care for one another.
I have a question, Zoltan. This is Richard. Are you there?
Yes, hi.
Zoltan, first of all, you might recognize my name. I worked on your Iowa campaign back in the day when you were running for president, and I do want to connect with you again because I'm particularly interested in working on fundraising for transhumanist enterprises and entities. So I have contacted you on the back channel. If you know what that is here, you may not be used to it yet, but there is a button you can push in your profile while you're here, and you can come back to it any time. And I have put my connection to you there. I just wanted to do that later, but I have a question for you in the meantime. What do you think on the anti-aging, what in your mind is the timeline for accomplishing anti-aging, stopping aging? I know, for example, that the researchers at Harvard have de-aged mice using that Japanese product, MSN. I know I'm working with a doctor. I can't say his name right now because it's confidential, but he's working on the telomere issue with slowing down the aging process. As we well know, there's a Hayflick limit in biology. I'm just curious, in your mind, by the way, your book, The Transhumanist Wager, is in a list of books I have assembled. If you Google my name, I've assembled a list called, it's like a library of books to rebuild America and the world in the 21st century. And Transhumanist Wager is one of the primary books in that list. So I just wanted to mention that if you are on a list of books I admire and promote for rebuilding the 21st century. I'm a futurist like you, but I just want to know, in your mind, the question is, how long do you think, where are you envisioning the conquering of aging to take place? What kind of a time frame? That's the question. Thank you.
Sure. Well, first, thank you for working on my campaign, and also thank you for including my book. I'm actually officially writing a sequel, so I'm really excited about that. And you know, I want to just this is a little.
Read it as soon as it comes out, of course.
Yeah, right now, no, it'll still be at least a year out. I literally just announced I started writing it, so it's going to be a while still. And there's no name yet, but I'm just calling it Transhumanist Wager 2. But there'll be a real name eventually. But you're gonna, it will cover all the newer ideas that I've been working on in my essays over the last 7 years. But let me answer your question about aging, because unfortunately this is a bit of a sad story. Usually it's all optimism with technology, and there's been a lot of great pushes in transhumanism. But I feel like 5 years ago there was more optimism in overcoming aging. I felt like, I'm 48, and I got 2 daughters, 11 and 7 at the moment, and I felt like I had a pretty good chance at overcoming death at some time before I was 70. My father died at 75, so I figured with some luck I'd live that long. unfortunately, it doesn't appear, and I'm not. This isn't just because of COVID. COVID did push us back, but it also pushed us forward in some ways. So we'll see the real ramifications of that later. But it just does. It just seems like some of the early studies on mice that we were able to reverse aging, that was really exciting, but they didn't have the implications in humans that we thought they would. It just turns out that the human, and the human brain especially, is more complex than everyone realized. Some of the best anti-aging studies right now are going on in the Alzheimer's field, because the fact is, if you can't control the brain, it doesn't really help that much to be able to, control the human body from aging. So there's some great stuff going on, but unfortunately, I got to feel like if I'm not 100% sure I'm going to make it anymore, because I got about 32 years left, maybe I would say that's what, the studies say, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to overcome death. Now, the difference, though, is that a huge amount of money has just in the last 3 years started to push into the field. Now, we're not feeling the effects of that money at all because that research has to go through. So the good news is that much more money is entering the field than I thought about 5 years ago. But the bad news is that whatever studies happened 5 years ago that are now coming out are not pointing us towards the idea that we will necessarily overcome death. Many of us at my age, 50 and maybe between 40, it's going to be very close. It's going to be very close whether we will be able to get to that point when science will be able to allow us to rejuvenate ourselves, live a lot longer. Those of us that sign up for cryonics may have to go that way to try to be brought back. But so the good news is there's a lot more money in the field coming in. The bad news is that it seems to me that we have slowed down, and that the research seemed so promising 5 years ago just didn't bring out the promises. That said, they've had great success with 3D printing of organs. For those who don't know, organ failure is one of the main reasons people die. So we have made some huge strides in that. So maybe it's, maybe we can get to 120, but unfortunately 120 is not going to be good enough for me. I want to get to 500 or 1,000 years of life.
You know that Aubrey de Grey, he's out there on a limb in some respects. I guess some people consider him kind of a wild card. Aubrey de Grey at Oxford, you may have run into him. Aubrey?
Yeah, I know Aubrey very well.
Okay, so isn't he that was quoted to say, is he the one who said, I think the first 500-year-old person has already been born? Or was that someone else?
He said it, I think, and he's probably right. It's probably my daughters. I think
have
my
a much better shot than you.
Yes, they have a great shot. But I think anyone under 50 it's looking dimmer, and those of us that are right at 50 are facing a really uphill battle. If you're 35, you got a very good shot, I think. As long as no asteroid happens, or we don't have some nuclear war that puts us all back. I mean, that's a whole other issue. But if we could just count on the science, I think if you're 35 or younger, you have a very good shot at not having to die. Those of us that are older have to really push, which kind of goes back to your fundraising thing. If people can fundraise and help more money go into the field of transhumanism to the scientists, we can get there quicker. It's a race. I'm telling you, every single day, it's a race.
Not everyone in the room may be aware of it, what you're talking about. But so what I was trying to point out, that sometime in the next the optimistic vision would be that it would happen in the next 10 to 20 years. A more conservative is that will happen, say, for your daughters in the next 50 to 60 years. It's a race against time. You understand? So, and what you're acknowledging is that it will happen. It's just when it will happen is the issue. Are you familiar with I just wanted to mention a couple things, and you may want to look at that list of books because I'm a little bit more optimistic than you. I follow Ray Kurzweil and Peter Diamandis quite closely, and as you know, Ray, of course, he's my age, and he's trying to make it. I'm 70. He's 73. I'm 74. Ray is trying to make it. So he wants to move that date up faster than 10 to 20 years because, you know what I'm saying? He's trying to make it into the window. I'm not certain that we can. It's very difficult, but, all of us that are at this age are still trying everything in the book to see if there's a shot, I have a particularly lucky longevity tendency in my bloodline. My parents both come from families with 100-year-old people in it, so I've got a chance to make it 20 years. Kurzweil talks about the year 2039, 2035, that he believes that we will have reached escape velocity where people are living so much longer each year. You're living 2 more years for each year you live in terms of longevity. And he believes that the escape velocity is about 2035 to 2040. So even though there is a chance for you, in my opinion.
Quick point.
Go ahead.
That's referred to as functional immortality when you have the situation that life expectancy is increasing by at least a year every year.
Yeah, that would be fast enough. It doesn't have to be 2 years every year. You know what I'm talking about? Escape velocity.
Yeah. Of course. I've been writing about it, so yeah, I know about it all. And I don't mean to be a little bit pessimistic. I can just tell you that, now that I'm at Oxford, I'm starting to read a much more academic perspective on longevity. I see that we all want to live longer. We're all very wishful thinkers, but the reality is that it's a tough world. We have to figure out some major new strategies to make it so that we can do it. And so far, a lot of the 5-10-year strategies that I've been talking about haven't actually panned out. They've helped, don't get me wrong. We're constantly moving the right direction. If you're healthy and skinny and eating the right foods, and you have a better chance of living longer than ever, even though maybe some other countries are losing, or people are dying more early, it's because of bad food. But if you're doing a good job and keeping yourself healthy, you will live as long as anybody in your bloodline. But it's not enough yet. So we're going to have to do more and be more, go out there and spread. That's what I was trying to talk about. Transhumanism must follow the environmental movement, the trajectory of it, so that we can grow also from 100 million people to, 5 billion people. Once we have 5 billion people screaming to end death, believe me, the politicians, the government, the money, everything will follow. We could become a world centered around science that makes this its most important goal. Once we do that, then we can start really accomplishing things, because we won't just have 10 million scientists working on it. We'll have 100 million scientists. It's a numbers game, and we have to push so that more people join the transhumanism movement.
And I think there is a potential problem there. If I may, I think there's a potential problem there, because the average age of principal investigators is increasing, and that doesn't necessarily mean that new ideas enter the consciousness of the scientific community quite fast enough. So I think sometimes the best progress is death in science. It's kind of like that Steve Jobs joke. What are you going to do with people who can't use a mouse and keyboard? That's a problem that solves itself when those people die.
So, yeah, isn't it true? I want to call to your attention the thinker, he's a biologist, Dr. William H. Andrews. He has made it a lifelong. Are you familiar with Bill Andrews?
Yeah, I know Bill well.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I'm working on financing with him so that you understand why I want to talk to you. If you know of a project that's very specific, I want to talk about it with you. So let me know. Also, okay. Elon Musk, or who is it? Is it Jeff Bezos and Peter Thiel have funded a company in San Francisco called Liberty Technology, which is working in the arena of senolytics, of course. I'm sure you heard about that. They funded that. They put up, $500 million to set up that company to take out the aging cells, the senescent cells. So if there's technology, and the thing you're saying is true. The consensus that is being created among scientists is that, wait a second, death is a disease. It is the biggest, baddest disease of all. And they're starting to consider the elite, I'm talking about the elite biologists and biochemists and molecular biologists. Yes, in fact, it is a disease. There are mammals that live to be 400, 500 years. That it is addressable. It is a scientific endeavor worthy. You are absolutely right. Since you ran for president, it's going like wildfire. It's articles in universities and way more information is coming out, in my opinion. But
at the same time, there's an obvious problem with the position that DeGray was articulating, that everybody who isn't enthusiastic about his program is depressed and has psychological problems and should be treated.
I mean, the people that follow his idea?
The people who disagree with him, that was his attitude.
Well, he has other problems too, but it isn't just him. There's, David Sinclair at Harvard. There's scientists at Tokyo University. It isn't just when I'm talking about this consensus. It's at major universities, and they're doing research for. I mean, Zoltan was talking about reproducing. I come from a field of transplantation. My first job out of college was working for Dr. Norman Shumway at Stanford. I don't know how I got this job, but I had a degree in biology, so I got involved in cutting-edge heart transplantation right out, and this is 40 years ago. So what I was going to say is all the avenues for extending aging are being considered at this point. You start transplanting hearts, livers, kidneys. There's a doctor at New York University, Eisenhower Medical Center, who's researching transplanting the brain, renewing the brain. His is a long-suffering project because you've got to transplant the brain a little piece at a time, like 10 surgeries. But the truth is once you start transplanting a human being in pieces, when is the day coming when they're going to start transplanting you entirely? In any case, I'm thinking out of the box here. Another transhumanist option. So all I'm saying is that the ideas are coming from all over the place. Much more thinking about that disease can be conquered, death can be conquered. So I just want to rest my claim. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know if Zoltan has more time to stay with us here.
Sure, Cecile. Yeah, I'll be happy to take. Yeah, I'll be happy to take one more question if somebody has one from somebody new. If they have it.
It's not questions but comments. If
Go
you
ahead.
Would entertain comments. So, well, first a quick quip, and I don't mean this as uncharitably as it might sound, but if you think Clubhouse is a hive mind, you understand neither. Clubhouse is a conversation, much like conversations have been had going back to antiquity. In fact, we were probably better at them in antiquity in some places. But anyway, on the issue that you raised, which is one that I've thought about what happens when AI wants to have political rights. Something that is not sufficiently well appreciated is that as soon as you enfranchise machines, it becomes an existential threat to democracy for non-cybernetic humans, because superhuman AI can and will reproduce faster than humans if it decides to, and thus biological humans would be politically marginalized. The resolution to the ethical dilemma of AI political rights would be to strictly limit the construction of AI systems it would be unethical to deny franchise to.
Yeah, well, I agree with you that AI will just replicate itself. In fact, people have asked me, what am I going to do when I upload myself to the machine? And I said, well, the first thing I'm going to do is replicate myself. So in case someone tries to kill me or something else happens, at least there's a few more Zoltans out there. And I think that's very natural. So there are a huge amount of ethical controversies with voting and stuff like that. I just want to be clear, I'm not necessarily for that. I'm just telling you, and some of the ideas that I have pondered openly and thought like, wow, what will happen? But these are brand new fields that nobody has actually really sure about what's going to happen, and it's very interesting in a sense because it's still science fiction, the AI world. But yeah, I mean, it becomes crazy when you start thinking about how many AIs there can be in just in the singularity. I mean, 1 second you might be able to create a trillion of them, and something like that. So it goes off the rails.
Not only that, I mean, this is actually like a trajectory that would lead to gray goo if you get like a replication competition to get the largest number of votes, and it's not restrained.
Yes. No, I agree with you, and I think in this sense, some restraint would have to be considered. And it's fascinating because I'm actually just about to do my AI module at Oxford, and there's just a lot of speculation out there on these topics, and people are addressing these ideas for the very first time in an academic way, which then leads people to at least have a basis for ideas, and then the world starts considering them, then the politicians. But I can tell you that it's a mix right now. Even academic papers are a mix between science fiction and what might happen in the, from a logical perspective at some time in 150 or whatever years.
Eli, don't you believe Asimov's laws should apply to AI?
Well, it's one thing to articulate them. It's another thing to make them stick.
Yeah, elective compliance will be tough for artificial beings, but I suspect they will find us as harmless as we find ants. They're only sometimes irritating when you leave crumbs out.
I tend to agree with that perspective. I think that's an underappreciated perspective, that AI just may not be interested in us. In fact, it's one of why the movie Her is one of my favorites. It's because I think, they may choose not to care at all about us.
Yeah, she left him because he bored her. He was too boring. He couldn't keep up with her. The AI intelligence left the guy because he was too... I'm sorry you can't keep up with me. Bye-bye. Have a nice life.
Yeah, there's a really good TED Talk about this, about the future of work with robots, and the way that they will operate will be on a different dimension of time. For example, like an oil rig may be running at 100 megahertz, but a CEO might be running at 3 gigahertz. So then the CEO spins up or accelerates the processing rate to very quickly discuss the issues that the oil rig is having. It wouldn't necessarily go down to 100 megahertz or that kind of thing. So even though that's an artificial example, that's one example of how communication may be different. Their perception of time may be higher density, very similar to how it is described in the movie Her, where it's like the time in between words is an infinity, which kind of sets a different scale for human interaction and human experience.
I'm excited, to be honest with you, about the interplay between the artistic intentions of AI and the artistic creativity capabilities of humans. It may create some of the most amazing art that's possible. I'm not negative about it. It may be new things are coming, new films are made, new music is created that we haven't even fathomed. I'm just not negative about it. I mean, yes, we have to be careful about, the Hollywood dark scenarios where AI takes over and kills all of us. Of course, that's going to be on the back burner, but I think that I think Clubhouse is another form of conversation that never existed before. It's kind of metaversical in some kind of obtuse way. I think it's like the Model T of the metaverse. I'm just suggesting that.
And I think we're inevitably training our digital avatars. So in some point in the future, these conversations may exist with beings that emulate or simulate our existence. So I think that's also an interesting perspective, especially from the commercialization opportunity that Clubhouse has here. This is a lot of interesting training data.
Thank you for coming, Zoltan. Thank you very much for coming. It's great to have you on the stage with us.
Zach?
Yes, thank you. I want to point out that the transhumanism thing is a mathematical problem more so than the other one. The thought that we might be able to like just take the problem and kind of run laps around it without doing mathematical like logic as base form.
You're kind of in the
same mission as going to space. And,
can you get closer to the signal?
He's in the Matrix. Sorry, Zach.
We could not. We could not hear you well. Zach.
Can you get closer to the Wi-Fi or something, or to the microphone?
Yes. How is this?
Yeah, that's much better.
Any better? Okay,
yep,
cool.
So
I just wanted to say, like, yeah. Okay. Hey, I just wanted to point out this is like a mathematical problem, and currently there's not a lot of funding really available for people who are kind of uprising through the mathematical ranks. I heard Richard say that he was looking for individual projects, and so I just wanted to kind of put my step into the ring for that and mention that I spent 10,000 hours on the Mathematical Encyclopedia website, and there's basically no chance of solving the transhuman mission without using mathematical foundations. There's a quote made by the Google, I think the Google CEO or something like that, where he says essentially it's saying that in order to solve any small problem, you need to solve all the problems at once. And I just want to say that.
Well, can you elaborate on that a bit? What is one example of such a concept?
Yeah. So basically, the idea is that if you're gonna want to figure out like how to extend life, I mean, you're gonna face probably I can't imagine the number of questions you might face, but if you can figure out the ways of which the information is like essentially like the basis for everything, you kind of are going to afford yourself a much more greater probability for that type of reasoning. And like I was saying, I've spent 10,000 hours on a mathematical encyclopedia website, so I'm pretty well equipped at this point, considering the types of algorithms that I've designed. But I just can't find the funding to kind of reverse, get to the discipline of mathematics. So I just wanted to possibly mention that if anyone's interested. Richard had mentioned something about that, being interested in individual projects.
I connected with you in the back channel, so take a look at that.
All right, cool. Thanks, y'all.
Well, everyone, I'm going to bow out here. I have get back to some of the work I have to do, but I just want to say thank you so much for having me here. And this is my first time on Clubhouse, so I find it fascinating just for that. But it's also fascinating that everyone, is talking about transhumanism. So it's really good. Especially, I love what you just said about the mathematical modeling. That stuff's great. But Cecile, thank you so much for having me in your Clubhouse, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I hope you will come back again, Zoltan. We've invited Miguel Nicolelis, who is the specialist on brain-computer interface and the founder of Neuralink, was his student, Max Hodak, and other people, and also Aubrey de Grey, and several other people involved in longevity and radical sciences. So I think, you will enjoy this environment, even just for the sake of discussion. So yeah, I hope we can invite you again. And in the next rooms, Chris and I will also be discussing more about transhumanism, and we'll be reading excerpts of your book, and also, we'll talk about the book of Chris. So, Zoltan, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. I know you're very busy at this time. So, yeah, in behalf of Quantum Photonics, thank you so much. So, Shara is our founder. Shara, would you like to say some words?
Oh, yeah, thanks, Zoltan. It's a great honor to have you today. We are excited to see your future campaign and future research and future books. So hopefully you can come here to talk about that with us again.
Yes, absolutely. I am writing a book, new books, one from Oxford and also one on the Transhumanist Wager, the sequel. So I would look forward to that. But thank you again for having me, and I hope your conversation continues and everyone explores the field of transhumanism. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. So if you want to leave, you see that at the top on the right side, yes, at the top, there's a leave quietly. You can press that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, and goodbye. Yes. Good night, everyone. It's my nighttime, so thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Good night. Thank you. Yeah. So I just want to tell everyone that Zoltan and I agreed to only have a 30-minute time, but anyway, it seems as if he enjoyed himself, and this is his first time in Clubhouse, and this is also Chris's first time in Clubhouse. So, Chris, how did you find your experience in Clubhouse?
Oh, I thought it was great. Yeah, it works well. I can hear everybody most of the time, and a lot of great ideas. So.
Yeah, the only problem is it can become addictive, and then you find yourself in your bathroom quietly whispering to your phone not to wake other members in your family. And then it just ends up looking like you're just doing crack in the bathroom. So that's...
Yeah. Cool. So I have something to look forward to.
Yeah, no, we don't have the problem. No problem at all.
Yeah, I can't do
it during my workday, or I would. You're absolutely right. It is addicting.
Well, now that there are replays, you can kind of go back and watch the things, but there's just something very special about doing it real time and interacting with folks. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, we'll be having next rooms, right, Chris? Maybe we'll have a post-party, which we will schedule at another date. And to also try to kick it off, maybe we will discuss a little more about transhumanism and maybe hear from you who are here today and listen to your ideas. So maybe we will invite more resource people to talk about it. Because there seems to be a lot of interest even in the back channel and from those people who haven't been able to attend today. So yeah, we will schedule it, and suggestions are welcome. So yeah. So are there more comments or questions from the audience now? At least Chris is here, or for the future schedules.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Looking forward to the post-party about this topic. And thanks for the great introduction and great pre-party. We're honored to have you today.
Thank you. You're welcome. It was a great time.
Yeah, probably we will have a post-party in about, the week after next week. And maybe Chris and I will organize it on how to make it systematic and catering to some of the questions that may have been, not so clearly answered now. Maybe there's no answer, but we will have this discussion certainly. And I think the book of Chris will help us also journey towards the questions that we might have. So yeah, with this, I have brought up Darcel. And I would like to announce the next rooms that we will have. Or Shara, would you like to announce it? So, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, sis. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can have a try. So thanks for everyone's support. We still have daily schedules. So for tomorrow, we will have a happy hour at 9 a.m. PST. And also in the evening time, 7 PST, we are honored to have Hansen to talk about the uncertainty principle, which is a very important principle in the quantum mechanics. Hope you can join if you want to learn some basic quantum mechanics and physics. And on the Saturday, we are honored to have Peter Walls, the AGI CEO, coming back to with us again to talk about artificial general intelligence. That's all for this week. And also we have some rooms not scheduled yet, but please follow Quantum Photonics Club and you will see all the schedules on the club page. Back to Cecile.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shara. I would just like to briefly say the titles of our rooms next week. These are not all the rooms yet, but some of the rooms are. A New Equation for Ethical AI with Matthew Bailey. He is an author, and he will talk about the ethics of AI. And another room would be about spin, statistics, space-time, and quantum gravity with Professor Blatko. And another one would be DUV and EUV lithography with Jayam, and he will talk about the hottest topics in semiconductors. And on the weekend, next week, we will talk about ethics and free will with Peter Boss again. So so far those are the rooms that are lined up. So thank you. Please try to attend these rooms. We hope you to have your continued support. So since we have Darcel here, Darcel, I give the mic to you.
All right. Well, I really enjoyed it, and I just wanted to let you know, Cecile and Sierra, that I will not be available tomorrow. I'm on location for a long production day, so I'm sure you'll be okay without me. Just somebody that might be your chance, Sierra, to start the countdown in a different language. Let's explore cultures. How about that? All right, so we're going to go ahead and start now. We're going to start with 10 because we got a lot of us on stage. Are you ready, everyone?
Ready. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thanks, Darcel. Thanks, Chris.
Yes, thank you.
All right, here we go. 10.
10.
9.
8.
77.
7.
6.
36.
5.
Square root of 25.
4.
Square root of 16.
3.
Square root of 9.
2.
Square root of 4.
Chris and Cecile, you are number 1. Call it out.
Uno. 1. Yeah, thank you and good night, everybody.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Cecile. Great
Thank
room.
you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone. Have good dreams.